Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutchaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Heather Morrison. She is an award-winning short film writer, director, teacher, coach who likes to record her life in photos and in writing. Can you introduce yourself, Heather?
Hi, everyone. Bridget, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
I think it's awesome. I'm so glad you took the time out for this. And when we last spoke, you had told me, I've been talking to a lot of people actually about what happened to them during the pandemic, and you had your job that you had was eliminated last fall. And that was probably, I'm sure, a shock, but that also made you pause and reflect on what you needed to do. And how did you handle that?
Well, it's kind of interesting, at least to me. Everyone's story is interesting to them, right? That's kind of the point. I had been in this job for 13 years,
Wow.
and we had some layoffs in the summer of 2020. And I was thinking, uh-oh, wonder what's going to happen. Because even though I worked for the largest healthcare company in the United States, with the pandemic, they were hurting financially, and so things were starting to happen in terms of job loss across the United States at this company. And um, I showed up for my one-on-one in September, on September 23rd, and not only was my supervisor, my regular call, my supervisor was there, of course, but then the VP was there, and I'm like, I don't usually talk to her. She's really nice, but she's really busy. And pretty pretty calmly and kindly and swiftly told me my job had
Oh,
been eliminated.
right to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said, you're not supposed to be here. And she goes, well, yes, I am. And I'm like, uh-oh. And I kind of laughed because honestly, it felt a little bit like dodgeball. And it was just my time to get tagged out.
Right.
So um, it happened. If it was going to happen, it happened in the best possible way. I did get a little bit of severance. It wasn't because of performance. I was doing a really good job. It was, if you've been in a job for a long time, you don't want to leave it feeling bad about it. And so I did leave under what I think is good circumstances. Anyway, but when I was done with the job, I was kind of like,
Right.
well, now what, and I'm a creative person. Like you mentioned, I've done some short films. Done some directing, and when I was younger I performed a lot in community theater, so I have that kind of background, and I wanted to do something creative. And I feel a little bit like the universe was kicking my butt a little bit, like, okay, it's time. You need to do something. You need to do something creative and fulfilling and satisfying, and also, with service. I wanted to be of service to people. Um so my last day was in October, and I just want to mention this, almost to a day. It was one day off my 13-year anniversary. So
Wow.
it's kind of interesting to me.
I know what you're saying, the number 13. Yeah.
Well, not
Better.
well, no, that's fine. It just literally the day before my anniversary, and it was like, wow, the timing is really interesting to me. If you believe in a kind and magical universe, and I'm trying to do that.
Right. It's time to move on.
It's
Right.
time to move on. So I had been wanting to do something, and I started to have something that was rolling around in my mind, and it started to gain some momentum. And several months ago, I started working with some private clients, helping them write their stories about living through the pandemic. And it just felt really important. It's journaling in the sense that it's very casual, it's informal, it's all about communicating on paper your experience. It isn't formal writing. It isn't about, like, that's not the right adjective. It isn't that kind of writing. I just wanted to get them writing, and writing a lot, because memory is ephemeral, and it disappears like smoke if you don't capture it as soon as you can and put it down on the page. So that's what we were doing, and we've been working together for several months now.
That's a good point. It does go away. And I've done journaling in the past, not consistently every day, but some of the stuff you find, you're like, wow, you forget about it. And it definitely helps. And you had mentioned this is also, you're trying to have a creative process of living. Is that the right word? This is going to helps you solve problems too, or things you're dealing with.
It totally does. I mean, inspiration is everywhere. When you start paying attention to what's happening to you, what people are saying, the funny things you the funny things you hear, and you start writing about them, then your life you become more aware of yourself and your life and your living, and that is like a creative process, just living. And this kind of work definitely helps you get in touch with your feelings and your thoughts and what you have to say. A lot of people really discount their voice, literally their voice, what they have to say. And so in addition to their stories, which are important, I really feel like this is helping people find and acknowledge and celebrate their voice, what they have to say, because it's important.
And everybody has a different perspective, right? Um,
Mhm.
on the same experiences. And you'd also, with your background, like you like photos, is that like a prompt that you incorporate in your class?
Yeah, I've been having them use photos because photos are like, what do they say? A photo is worth 1,000 words, right? So you can capture so much with a photo, of the feeling that you had when you took it, and the sense of time, the light in the photograph, the shadow, the things you took and the things that you didn't take. When you have a picture, there's almost a picture frame around it, because you are saying, look at this and don't look at that. And if even if you're not so-called trained in photography, we still subconsciously edit what goes in and what doesn't go in. So yes, using photos and objects can be um, very inspiring. It can inspire a lot of emotions and thoughts and trigger memories that you may have forgotten and what you even felt about them. So they're powerful tools for
Right. And I
sure.
would think too that looking at a photo like 10 years, you had it 10 years ago, and looking at it again now, and even in the future, you might have a different thought come out.
Yeah, how many times have you looked at a photo from just a couple years ago and you get this like visceral hit of like, oh, I remember the flowers were blooming and they smelled like this, and I was with a friend, or um, it's very potent.
It is. And I'm like you, I like photography and I like the writing aspect, but I never thought about writing prompt from a photo. So I think that makes it a different perspective. And I think that's really cool. So those are your people that are involved in your class. They are their photos or they are your photos? I'm
Oh
saying.
no, it's their photos.
Yeah.
My photos wouldn't be
Right, I
meaningful
was
to
just thinking, oh, okay. Right. Yeah, no, they wouldn't have meaning to them. I think this is so good that you're doing that, just what you've learned from the pandemic, you using your creative background to help people capture important life experiences, basically. And
Mhm.
and it's just a good, you mentioned the last time we talked, like a legacy, creating a legacy for them and their family. It doesn't have to be published, publicly, but just internally for their family.
Yeah. I think it's really important because it's funny, I've been hearing it a lot lately, and it's been popping up. Talk about a magical universe. I've been seeing it like in movies that you went like, I'm just entertaining myself watching a movie, and they'll say, oh, my grandmother lived in a certain place. I wished I'd asked her more questions. How many times do you hear people say, I wished I'd asked more questions? You
Right.
know?
Same, like I think about my grandmother, my father's side. I wished I'd asked her more stuff, but you just don't think about it, right? At the time. And I would just love to hear her background because she's very feisty. That's part of it. Um, I think maybe that's my lineage and my family. I'm just kidding. You gotta, she learned to survive in the deep South, and she took care, I think about it now, she took care of my mother. My mother's from France, and my mother was being helped by this Southern woman, It's just amazing that I'm gonna, after talking, I'm gonna talk and get more information from my mother, get her perspective too, because that is just amazing, the life lessons, just, that we can just learn from listening.
And understand them as people instead of just our
My mother,
parents or
right,
grandparents or,
right. What
know.
they experience is just amazing, and how, I don't know, it's just collecting your memories is a really good idea too, because as we age, we might forget.
We do, and it's really sad. My dad is 94, which is great, but he has dementia, and he knows me. He knows who I am, thank goodness, because that will be very sad when he can't recognize me any longer.
Yeah.
Um, but he doesn't really remember. He doesn't. His memories are not reliable
But I
any longer.
bet you could tell you some good stories though, maybe. Right?
He has told me some tall tales, but he
Right.
doesn't.
That's what I'm saying, right.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Fiction.
And at this point, honestly, talk about a voice. I talk to him largely because I want to hear his voice. Because another thing that's really ephemeral is just the sound of somebody's voice, and when it's gone, it's gone. It's a one. It's a one. We're all unique. Like they say snowflakes. Although I heard that sometimes snowflakes can be just like another snowflake. But
Slightly different. Yeah, that's one
yeah.
thing I regret is not having a voice recording of like my grandma. But back then that wasn't as common. You know what I'm saying? I don't have her voice, but in my head I can hear. But if I found some letters that she wrote me, but I can hear her in my head when I read it. So does that make sense?
No, that's really wonderful. That's that internal like narrator. That's wonderful that you can still conjure her voice. It's so precious. It's a
So
precious
she had a very
thing.
distinctive voice because she was, and that's so funny. I joke, because my father's very Southern and my mother's French. So I had such a weird culture growing up. And so maybe that's why I focus so much on different aspects and perspectives. That makes sense. I mean, maybe that's why I try to
Mhm.
sit back and look and not judge. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to help with your clients. Well, it doesn't have, I shouldn't say the word client, your students, excuse me. You're trying to help them, right? You're bringing people together to help, to heal in a way. Is that a good word?
Yeah, no, it is. I think that writing is very therapeutic, and by putting your attention on, your experiences, it's validating, and in my brand new upcoming workshop, which by the way, my business is a little, like the name has been in flux, but it's called Memory Keepers Society, and so the workshop will be of the same name, and the kind of the sweet spot will be people writing in community, because there's also an element of bearing witness, not only you bearing witness to your own life, but other people bearing witness to yours. It's very healing, because I think you can feel, I mean, we've all experienced some level of isolation, some more than others, and it's pretty painful. As a human being, we're not designed to be isolated from each other or not to touch each other.
Yes.
So yeah.
It's definitely this pandemic. I think a lot of people are also finding out what's important to them, right? And I consider myself really lucky, even though we had weird stuff happen, I'm just lucky that I'm still here and still have the opportunity. I'm podcasting. It grew during the pandemic, right? I did
Mhm.
pause for a couple months to do some writing myself because I wanted to focus. But I like the idea that we can, like I'm recording this on Zoom for those that are listening. It's just, and I could see Heather's face. We're talking to each other, and I kind of goes in line with photos, right? And so we're going to have this forever. Does that make sense? So I'm assuming on your workshop and when you're doing this together with people, I'm assuming it's on something similar like a video Zoom call or
Yes. Yes. We will gather on Zoom um, uh, on a weekly basis for about 5 weeks. I call it a 5 week plus a party. So,
I
so
love it.
because at the end, what I'm planning to do is have students invite, a few friends and family, and then share the work that they've created, to honor their accomplishment of writing their collection of work, and um, share, that some family may not have even heard some of these stories that they'll want to talk about, and I'm hoping it will inspire more people to say, I want to talk about the pandemic, because we're in kind of this funny, vulnerable time where there is some sense that the pandemic is kind of wrapping up, which is not accurate.
No.
People are still sick and dying. I mean, I don't want to go into that too much, but I know that India has really been struggling,
Yeah.
and we are still vulnerable, because I think there's also there's a fatigue level now with living in it, that we've gotten used to it, and so we're starting to take risks, like not wearing our masks or getting too close to people and forgetting about those kinds of things that are really still very important. But anyway, I feel like I went down a rabbit hole,
But
but the
that's
point
okay.
is,
It's important because it's what's happened is affecting not just our home life, but it's our work culture, is my understanding too. It's going to affect that in different ways. And they're finding, I've been working from home, or I think that's what you call it, remotely, for like 20 years. So it wasn't, that's why I'm saying it didn't affect me as much, of having to go in. I mean, I traveled a lot back in the day. So, but that's right. My husband can't travel because it was the rules they put in place for his company that he works for. It's just kind of weird, but they're finding it. People are being more productive. And I always try to, you want to acknowledge the bad, but also I try to look for the good. That's just me.
oh,
And yeah,
there's definitely been gifts. I mean, that's one of the things that and they are my clients, because right now I'm working one-on-one with people. So I know you see, you weren't your like clients, students. They will be students when they're in a course, right? But that there has definitely been some gifts, like revisiting things that they love to do that they hadn't had time or put their attention on. One of my clients has taken up canning and baking again, and she makes beautiful bread. She sent me some pictures, and I hope that she'll include those in her collection. And my other client was so inspired by the work that we're doing that she felt confident enough to sign up for her first formal writing class. And
oh,
so yeah, so she's starting a children's book, and she's never written one before. So um all kind, lots of things can come out of a creative process um that is positive.
I think it's good, what you're saying. I also noticed books, I should say, there's data to support it. Books have been really, really popular in the past year and a half. And mostly it's physical stuff, not just an ebook or something. People just wanted to have something tangible in their hand because, like you were saying earlier, we're being a little isolated a little bit, but we have to stay safe. But at the same time, they having something tangible. And that's how I prefer that anyway. If I'm reading a book, I mean, I have ebooks too, don't get me wrong, but it just depends. And definitely children's books have skyrocketed and
Mhm.
young adult stuff, just so you know. Because that's my background. I'm in that kind of stuff. So it's just increasing. And um, we joke now, like when I'm working on projects, trying to get paper for books is like toilet paper 2020. It's
Wow.
a good problem to have. But a lot of the paper mills, people don't, they didn't shut their printers down, thankfully, because they're considered part of the supply chain, thankfully. And because that scared the heck out of us. We're like, whoa, right? And because they had to use their sources to create more packaging, right? So now people are creating more physical books. And so they're placing the orders. And so it's kind of, I mean, it's a good thing. It's a pain in the butt some days. But but right, but I look at it as a good problem to have. And it's because I've always loved books, right? I'm just one of those people. I've always been a book girl, the book geek, whatever, always having a book. And I just think it's good what you're doing, and people are, it doesn't have to be some huge quantity. It's just helping people in your little circle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And there is something about a physical product, I think, and people are going to have an option, especially with this kind of this first time that I'm doing it. Some people are not going to want to print things out or even like have a concrete book. Although I am hoping that they will, because there is nothing like holding something that you've written and created and gathered together into a beautiful book that you can treasure yourself and pull it out, pull it off. It's sitting there right next to, Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird, or the dictionary or whatever, and it's your book. And also something you can share with, grandchildren or your children, so they can, I hate to say a memento, because I do not want to undercut the seriousness of anything that we've experienced, but um, it is like I think of it as a living legacy, because you're still alive.
I
And it's here's that person, but for generations to come, it's going to be a, kind of a vital link to who this person was in your family. um and even though part of my mission, and this is a personal part of it, because other people may not really be very interested in this, but when historians look back at and they're looking at periods, in history, like the Spanish flu pandemic or the Civil War, one of the things that they look at is they look at photos and they look at journals, because they want to know, what did people really go through? What did they talk about? What did they care about? What did they think about? And they're so precious. This thing that we think are so mundane are going to be like gold for future historians. So part of me selfishly wants people to write about it, so that historians can know more about what we were experiencing now.
love that aspect, the history aspect, because that's how the future, like you said, we learned from what happened during the flu pandemic. And then now this is what's happening globally. I mean, it happened, flu was global as well, but it's just amazing that I don't know, it just makes you have more empathy too for people to understand. And not, like you're saying, we're isolated in this, you understand them a little bit better. And then what can we learn from that and change and adapt and tweak a little bit. So we don't, I mean, it's going to happen again. I'm not trying to be negative, but sometime it's something like this will happen again. We just have so many bodies and animals everywhere. But it also, I don't know, it's just really amazing what we're all dealing with. And I'm so glad you brought up the history aspect, because you don't know, Heather, what you've written might be in a history book 50 years from now. You don't know.
You just don't. You're right. You don't. And it's interesting. This morning, I saw on my Google feed that I'm not sure it's, and I can't pronounce the name of the company. It's the one that's the AZN. Oh no, it's Pfizer. It's Pfizer.
Gotcha.
has potentially, or they're in development to develop a oral dose for the coronavirus. So can you imagine that if it crops up again, you might just have to take a pill, like a single dose pill or a 2-dose pill or something, and that's it.
That'd be so much easier for me. I mean, I've only had one vaccine shot. My next one is scheduled, oh gosh, less than 2 weeks from now. It just depends on the state you live in and blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
I'm in the age group where they were like 55 and older. I'm barely 55. I mean, but that's how it is. But now, then like a month later, they said everybody adults 16 and older can get it. So we're just trying to get it done. But I was, to be honest with you, a little afraid, just because I'm like reading what side effects were. And I actually feel fantastic, So but maybe it was just out of the way. Maybe I was just reading too much. People's perspectives are different, and I did it what was the right thing for me. My doctor, because I had some weird health history, so my doctor's like, you need to do this, and so I did, and it was the right thing. And I can't wait to get. I know some people are like, oh, you don't need a second. I'm like, I'm gonna get it. Sorry. Make sure it's effective, and that's what people need to realize. I mean, some people are going to choose not to do it. But I think it's just I don't want to because of my health history, it's benefited me. How's that? And people don't realize these vaccines that can be used in the future for other, they're still researching what they can use it for other issues like the Tdap, the booster shot, tetanus, that's used now to help treat people with brain tumors. People don't know that, right?
Oh, wow. No, I
Right.
didn't.
And so that's what I'm saying. You just don't know. And I'm overall fairly healthy. I just, people who can be affected by this coronavirus have other underlying health issues. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm fine. So, but fear's there, to be honest with you. And I think it's just because the unknown, but I took the risk. I'm a risk taker anyway. I'm just blabbing here. But one thing, I'm just glad that we're all going to be okay long term. Our society, our culture. That's really what it's about. And I think your perspective, your background as a writer and a director, you understand how to share the stories better. And to jump back into your class thing, it's kind of your community you created. It's got to be, your goal is to have like feedback to each other, or is that the right word?
Yeah, there'll be some structured feedback. I'm sorry, I just talked over you. I get enthusiastic. Yeah, some people, depending on their experiences, don't know how to give feedback. And it's really important because the kind of feedback is not going to be, this isn't about, I'm laughing because I'm having flashbacks, because anybody who's taken like creative writing classes know like how hard it is to write a story, and then people sometimes say terrible things to you, and it isn't helpful. So I kind of call my class a non-writing writing class, because it's more important that you write than that it's any way perfect. And I'm using air quotes right now. You can't see that. I'm air quoting.
Right.
It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm more concerned about how well you convey your voice in your story. And so the feedback and coaching will be around maybe, getting somebody to expand what they wrote on, or connect things up. It will be more contextual like that. And people who will be giving feedback as like classmates to each other are going to be focusing on anything like clarity, or what color green was it? Was it like a deep dark green, or was it like a grass green? And what color was the sky? And these sound like little things, but they also just really put somebody else in your experience. And so that's where the feedback is. There's not going to be a lot of it, but there will be some to help you just convey what you want to say better.
Right. It's important just to make sure they're understanding what you're trying to put down. And it shouldn't be about writing style. It should be about, like you said, clarity. And that's
your voice. Yeah, helping you have your voice, the voice that you want to use. So you're not, because if you write, for example, if you write at too high a level, it won't touch you. It won't touch the other people who you want to know, like what it was like to walk in your moccasins, for example, right? Walk a mile in someone else's shoes, kind of thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm just amazed at what you're doing. It started off, your job was eliminated. I won't say fired, because it was eliminated, and it wasn't just you, but you like paused and like, okay, take a deep breath. What can I do? And you wanted to help people. And this is an example of you using your skill set to help other people, and you're applying it going forward. And who knows what's going to come out of this. And I have all kinds of ideas in my head of what you're saying. I'm like, I get excited too about stories. And my first love, of course, is a book, right? And then I would just imagine all the other ideas people are going to get out of this. And you've got to start, and you've got to starting at a smaller platform. Who knows what it can do? And so do you know when you said the Memory Keeper Society, when's that actually going to start? You said it's like every 5 to 6 weeks it's gonna last? Or?
That's my goal.
Okay.
I am I'm trying to get the word out there, which is why I was so excited that you allowed me to like most of my way in here and get the word out. So yeah, I'm working on growing my community now and giving them a taste of what this class might be without pulling the curtain back too much, so they can think like, oh, I can do that on my own. I'm like, you can, but it's more fun to do it in community, and it's a richer experience. And honestly, people don't necessarily have the motivation sometimes to do it on their own, and so this is like a great opportunity to get that support and have some real like concrete help. So I'm working on bringing people into the society and getting them going, and it's going to take me a little while, but if you to stay in touch with me, you can find me on Facebook at Writing with Heather. And Bridget is going to pop in a link that's too long for me to tell you right now on her page. So please look for that. And if you want to start writing about the pandemic and getting your stories down, the link that she has for you is going to get you subscribed on my list so you know what's going on, and give you a great little download once you subscribed to start telling your story. Like, start today. There's no reason that you can't start today. I made it really easy and fun and quick.
It just takes, right, like you said, start with a blank page. Excuse me. Of course, my sinuses are acting up at the end here. You start with a blank page and you just write whatever. I just think start just to write your thoughts down, whatever you're thinking about. It's just a good way. And as Heather said, I will have the summary of the links that she's talking about, and even to include the Facebook page, Writing with Heather. And I truly, truly appreciate your time, because I find it very inspirational, and just being creative helps you come up with ideas and solutions. And that's kind of related to the resilience of real things living, right?
I was just going to say, Bridget, like, I'm so excited to be here because your podcast is about resilience, and having a voice and using it is like a cornerstone of resilience, right? Of inhabiting your life and your body and your emotions and your stories, and getting through, like, it's been an up and down. It's been a turbulent, challenging time. There have been some gifts, but I won't sugarcoat it. It's been hard for people. I almost lost my dad a year ago, not to COVID, but he had some other issues, and my mom's had some health issues. It's very challenging in a COVID world, and writing really helps.
It definitely makes it harder, and we all have something. And my sister-in-law lost her father last year. Not her father, her father. My brother lost his father-in-law, and he fell down, broke his hip, and had a rehab. And they go in. Then he got COVID from being in a rehab facility last year, right? And so my sister-in-law couldn't even see him, because
that's heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking, right? And so that's kind of why I just appreciate every single day, and that's kind of what the takeaway is: appreciate and start with a blank piece of paper and just write your thoughts down, just in case, right? You just never know.
It's true. It's really true.
And let's be resilient, everybody. Thank you again, Heather.
Thank you, Bridget. It's been so much fun to be here.
It's awesome. Take care.
You too.